Hey everyone, it's Dora from flippinghousesanpancakes.com, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you're going to find in my brand new cookbook. So when I go to a bookstore and pick out a cookbook, I like to take a look through it. I like to see if the recipes sound interesting, and the pictures look nice. I like to have an idea that it's a book that I'm going to want to read. And I realized that my book is not yet in so many bookstores. You can hear my dog barking. Sorry about that. There's a siren outside and my dog is barking. So I figured that I would show you a little bit of what is in my book so that you would get a feel for it, so you would know exactly what you're getting yourself into when you buy my cookbook. So it is called Flipping Houses and Pancakes. It has not just food in it. It does talk about flipping houses, and it does talk about kitchen design. You can see kosher recipes and kitchen design tips. So that's really what you'll find in my cookbook. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. You'll get a little view. There's an introduction. There's a page that talks about who I am, what I've done, how I ended up getting to the point where I was doing a lot of cooking and where I decided to write a cookbook. And I got into the business of flipping houses and designing kitchens. I also have for a section for people who don't know enough about kosher cooking, or just wondering why I have certain things in this book. I do have a page that talks about kosher kitchens and why we use our kitchens the way we do. And then, of course, my table of contents, where it tells you that I have sections on flipping houses, on kitchen makeovers that were like before and afters, and different design tips for very specific things. And then, of course, my recipes, which is most of the book, is actually recipes. Then I have 3 sections that look just like this. These are my flip houses. So I'll show you the pre-flip part of the house and talk about what condition we found the house in, different things that happened while we were building it, some insight as to how the project went, and then, of course, how the project finished and how different the house looked when it was done. So I do have 3 sections in my cookbook about that. I have all my different, every section has a divider page so that you know exactly which section you're getting into, and I combine the themes of kitchens and cooking throughout the entire book, because you cook in your kitchen. The way your kitchen feels, the way your kitchen functions, very much affects how you cook and how you enjoy cooking. So I talk about that in every section. And I do have tips all throughout the book. And then I have recipes. So I've got a lot of recipes. Most of the photos were done by my friend Rachel Lazar. She is a food photographer here. Some of them were actually done by me. And I'm telling you that you will not know which one is which. That is the fun secret, is that I know which ones are, but you won't know which ones I took and which ones she took. I watched a lot of good YouTube videos that helped me improve my photos. That was great. And then on a lot of pages you'll have, for example, kitchen design tips or cooking tips. I've got them both all throughout. Some of them are silly and funny because I did try to include humor throughout my book. So I've got lots of recipes, even some fun photos of people who are important to me that made it into my cookbook. This was very much a labor of love, this cookbook. My kids asked me to make it, and so I wrote it really for them. I wrote it with a sense of humor. I write it in a way that when I'm telling you how to make the recipe, when I give you the directions, I'm talking to you. So you'll feel like I'm in the kitchen with you, telling you how to go about doing it. And you'll see, like, for example, right here, here's a cooking tip. So sometimes there's kitchen design tips, sometimes there's cooking tips. Lots of beautiful photos. I had so much fun writing this cookbook. Some of the recipes are from people who have been important in my cooking experience, people who have given me amazing recipes over the years that I felt like everybody needed to know how to make that one dish because it was so delicious. So they're in here, and of course I credit them because it was their food. It was very delicious. I also have, like I said, several sections of kitchen makeovers. There are 4 kitchen makeovers in here, and I show the befores and I show the afters, and I talk about what was bad or what we needed to improve in the before kitchen, and how we fixed it when I designed their new kitchen, and how we made it exactly what they were looking for. And while I do talk about them being a kosher kitchen, these tips really are good for any kind of kitchen, anybody who's cooking. It doesn't matter if your kitchen is big, it doesn't matter if your kitchen is small. My kitchen design tips are not specifically meant for people with giant fancy kitchens who never cook. My design tips are meant for people who just want to improve their kitchen. It doesn't matter if it's a tiny kitchen or if it's a huge kitchen. I have done both. The goal is to just make your kitchen more functional and more beautiful, but the function side is really what my focus is on. And I have just like so many fun pictures. Look at those. Look at the hands. Oh my goodness. They had so much fun taking those pictures. All the photos were taken at my house. I made all the food in the photos. I plated them myself, so you know that that is not going to be professional looking plating. It is going to be a mom plating food plating, because that's me. I'm not a chef. That's how the food looks. It's not going to be super fancy, and you'll feel like you can never make it look that way. This is really just how the food looks when I make it. All the photos were taken, like I said, at my house, either outside, inside. It depended on which part of the weather. In my sukkah, we had a really good time. In my kitchen, on my porch, just everywhere. In my living room. And then I have sections, like I said, about kitchen design and like specific topics. So this one specifically talks about adding a focal point. This one specifically talks about the actual layout of a kitchen and the classic formations that you would put your kitchen in so that you get the right layout and everything is where it needs to be. So it just gives you a lot of information that you don't necessarily have to use. I just found it entertaining. And if you read it, I don't always write it in the most straight-faced manner. Sometimes there's humor in there. So that's mostly what's in my cookbook. Lots of different food. I have breads and soups and dips. I have food from all over the world. I have obviously meat and chicken and poultry. I have fish. I have some, I call them pareve, which is going to be something that's not meat or chicken, and it's also not dairy. So there's some of that in there. I've got some tofu recipes. I have dairy recipes, side dishes, lots of desserts, and from all over the world. I have food from the Middle East. I have food from Asia. I have food from Europe. I have American food, classic Ashkenazi food, classic Sephardi food, Persian food. I have food from Guatemala. I have food from Jamaica, food from everywhere, because isn't it nice to taste all kinds of recipes? I think it is. None of them are super hard also. My recipes tend to be pretty simple because I have 5 kids. I don't have time to make fancy recipes, and I figure you don't have time to make fancy recipes either. There are a few recipes in the book that might take a little extra time, but for the most part, the recipes are quite easy. They're easy to follow. They're easy to make. A lot of the recipes freeze well because I love freezing food. It's always good to have a second meal sitting there in the freezer for those crazy moments when you suddenly need something. Some of my recipes are amazing for kids to make because I've got 5 kids. It's great if they can make themselves something to eat, or it can help you out when you're getting ready for a big party, something like that. There's lots of that kind of food in here. Just tasty, flavorful, Some of them are easy. I tell some silly stories in here. There's also, I have some friends who cannot have gluten, and so there's several really good recipes that would traditionally have gluten but do not have gluten in my cookbook. So I have a breaded chicken, I have a meatloaf, I have some brownies, I have a cookie. All of them are gluten-free, and I figure that's really great for people who can't have gluten. There are recipes in my cookbook for them. There's really a little bit of something for everybody. There's several recipes that you could use for Passover or Pesach, because why not, right? I think there should be a little bit of everything. So I really enjoyed making this cookbook. You can see here's some more fun photos. I took that one. Now you know that was one of mine. But this was a really fun project. Now I think you've seen some of what's in my cookbook. But I have one more thing. Let me just flip to it so I can show you. I've got one more thing you could see. Oh, I'll swivel so you could get a view of the book while I'm doing that. Let me find one more thing, because that was the last flip. Because this, oh, and by the way, I have a huge section just on countertop materials, and the positives and the negatives for these materials, and whether you want them in your kitchen or not, and where you could use them in other places in your house. And then I have this, and this is the index. This cookbook has an index. I did the whole thing. It was torture. It was torture, but it's there. So anytime you need to look up something, a recipe, a certain ingredient, it's there in the book also. So now you have an idea of what is inside my cookbook, and I hope you will go ahead and find it. It's on my website, flippinghouseandpancakes.com. It's also on Amazon, and it's starting to go in some of the local Baltimore bookstores. Some of the independent bookstores here in Baltimore are starting to carry it. I hope you will look it up and go check it out, because it is a fun book to read. And the food tastes good too. So that's always important for a cookbook. If you like this video, please hit like, please subscribe to my channel, click the bell for notifications so you find out every time I upload a new video. And like I said, please go check out my website, flippinghouseandpancakes.com.